like, okay, there we go.
Got it. Oh.
Hello, everybody. um, I would like to take a moment to introduce on my screen, she's right there, uh, my good friend. This is Aly Perez. And Aly is the manager at Cheap Joe's. And so I've been friends with Aly for a long time, since before she was the manager. Or you were always the manager?
Mhm. Yeah.
Since
Yep.
always when she's been the manager. um, and we're going to talk with Aly a little bit about her Hispanic heritage, which comes from Puerto Rico. Is that right?
hmm
Yeah.
Yes. Correct.
Will you start by telling us just a little bit of your story?
Um, so like my full background, I guess I was born in Puerto Rico, my sister and I were, and our parents moved us to the States when I was the baby, and I lived in Maryland for a long time, moved to North Carolina for college, and I haven't left. I started working at Cheap Joe's in 2009, right after college. I actually was on my way to work for a big corporate company, and I didn't want to do it anymore. So I quit that job and I went on Craigslist, found Cheap Joe's, got hired as an assistant manager. And then 3 years later, my boss left to go become a nurse and to start a family. And so I took over for her, and I've been a manager ever since. And actually, just this year, I got promoted to upper management. So now it's a little bit of both. And I also last week just celebrated my 14 years with Cheap Joe's,
Oh,
which
wow.
is super crazy. I've only ever had two jobs in my life, corporate America, and now here.
Did you start at the Cheap Joe's in over by App?
I started at the one in Charlotte. I started
Oh,
working at that store probably about a year and a half after it opened in Charlotte. And so I've been a part of every move and every change and all the things. And then I moved to Asheville in 2015. I left that store to open up this store.
I was
And I've
gonna say
been,
you opened the store here, right? Yeah.
yep, sure did. I built it. It was a shell of a store, and we got to put all the fixtures and build the walls. Like it's pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
That's I call it my baby because I really was here from the very first day we moved in.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Well, cool.
yeah,
So I'd like to now dig into your Hispanic heritage. We're talking about Hispanic heritage in our middle school.
yeah.
And when you and I talked about this before this interview, you spoke a little bit about how, and maybe I'm saying this wrong, you felt like your family kind of hid their heritage a little bit, or kind of kept it back from you. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Both of my parents were born in New York, but their parents are Puerto Rican. And so it's like their parents lived in Puerto Rico and then moved to the States, had my parents, and then my parents in their 20s ended up moving back to Puerto Rico. And that's when they met each other. And then they had me and my sister. And I guess they kind of decided that it would be best for our family. And I kind of feel like there might have been some issues. My dad owned a business, and his partner basically scammed him. And so I think there's just like some resentment, but my parents wanted like a better life. And so they chose to move back to the States. And what I find interesting is that, like, growing up as a kid, we were kind of taught to be more Americanized than to be in our own heritage. And I'm assuming it was just to make how we were acclimated to our environment a lot easier. So we grew up Roman Catholic, so I went to Catholic school, and even that was a lot of, speak English, don't speak Spanish. We went to English mass, not Spanish mass. And now we still celebrated some holidays, like Three Kings Day is not a celebrated holiday except among Hispanic cultures, which I find very interesting. Um, but yeah, it's bizarre. I never really understood any of that until kind of high school and even college, that how much of my culture I don't know enough about because it wasn't instilled in us. We still did some things, right? Like your typical large family dinners, and you have really big parties with amazing music, and I did spend every summer from the time I was a baby until I was 11 or 12 in Puerto Rico. So I still had all of that experience, but it was definitely different. And I, when I went to high school, nah, more so college, I was the minority, and it's something that I wasn't like used to, which was also kind of different. And that's really when I started to learn, like, oh, there are things about my culture that I don't know about because everyone else has their own little thing. Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic. My sister really speaks Spanish very well. Um, it's not something I can do. I cannot conjugate. I do not understand words. I could hear my parents; they spoke Spanish all of the time, and I could understand a lot of what they said. And we ate a lot of Spanish foods, so I know a lot of the Puerto Rican culture in that way. But yeah, just as far as like, if I went to Puerto Rico right now, I would be completely clueless.
Do you
Yeah.
feel like are there things that you miss, or maybe on the opposite side, like do you feel like you're happy kind of the way that that your path has come, or do you even think about it?
I do think about it. I actually just had this conversation with my best friend. She had asked me how I felt about my culture and, all the things that represented and like what puts it down, and it's something I haven't fully ever thought about as a kid, and I think it's because I've been so accustomed to just like American culture that I just have like my own tidbits of what our family did, and I just assumed that that's the norm until I like went to college and I hung out with the Cuban family. I'm like, whoa, you guys, y'all go hard. Like I knew that we went hard when I was a kid, but it's like they're in their 20s and they're still doing exactly what I was doing, but when I was like 5.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes I'm sad that my parents didn't allow the culture to really be like prevalent in our upbringing. Like, so my real name is Elisha, instead of Aly, and I go by Aly because I it was easier for people to pronounce. And like as I've gotten older, I'm kind of sad that no one will really ever address me as Elisha except for my partner, my parents, and then like my best friends are the only ones that really do it. And I can't say that that affects my identity, but I'm curious to know like how things would have been different if like we had kept even something as simple as my name. Like I am Elisha, no middle name, which is very big in Hispanic culture, which didn't really know about until I got made fun of a bunch, and I looked it up and I was like, that's common. That's common. That's a thing. But and then other cases, I can't say that I'm like super phased by not knowing a lot of my culture. It's just shameful for me when I have friends who want to go and do stuff and they're like, isn't that what you guys did? And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Well, thank you. Our students are now gonna like they're gonna think about some questions that relate to what we've just talked about,
Yeah.
and consider how maybe some other fellow students may have be in a similar situation to what you're in, and
Yeah.
so thank you for sharing,
Yeah.
and I'm always stoked when I can show like a strong woman who's like being successful out in the world, and
Yeah.
then doubly excited when they're related to art. So
Yeah. I'm about that. Like, and I support that fully. Like, I will say that is probably something that is in the genetics of my heritage. Is we are strong, powerful folks.
nice. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing with us.
Yeah.
I'll see you again soon.
Yeah. Sounds good.